Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. This is the EVE Talk where CCP is also holding EVE Vegas. So I did just take a look at the EVE Online keynote from EVE Vegas. I didn't watch that live, it was like 1 AM for me here in Belgium, so that was like a little bit late after a full week of work, but I did just manage to watch it on Twitch. If you yourself are wondering how to get that, because I was struggling with that myself, there is a Reddit post that will immediately get you to the right video that is still up on Twitch. I think that they don't last that long, but you know, if you're watching this EVE Talk, you might still be able to grab it. Basically what you want to find is the entire stream from the first day of EVE Vegas, and there at around 2 hours and 5 minutes you will see the EVE Online keynote. There was some interesting information there, but one thing that I did note right away is that it's no longer a winter expansion, it's now called a winter update, so the scope is not that big, although I do like myself the 64-bit client. I think that could be pretty damn cool and pretty big. New Triglavian ships coming as well. We were half expecting that, but I was expecting that more along the lines of later in 2019. And then, in my opinion, something that might actually start impacting the market and the game pretty soon is, of course, the changes to war decks. I made a video about it, and it was pretty obvious from the CSM minutes that this was something that had taken front page for CCP just because of the impact that it was having on the game. And so the very first change that they'll do this year already is that only corporations that have structures will be war deckable. Ouch, that might put me at a little bit more risk. On the other hand, we also don't know how the dynamic works when, like in my case, the alliance holder corporation doesn't have structures. So yeah, all of that we'll have to wait and see, but know that there is definitely a lot going to be happening when it comes to war decks in EVE Online, and that the updates, in my opinion, no super major hype from the winter update rather than a winter expansion, which might also have its effects, of course. As always, we are going to start with a quick look at the New Eden store, where we actually have a sale for the Octopus Orange Flight skin, so a Caldari range one. Did a quick calculation, it's 25% off, which is not bad. There's definitely some cool ships in there, like the Raven, the Jackdaw, you've got the Drake as well, and then Cerberus. You know, a lot of pretty cool looking and popular ships actually have a skin on sale at 25%. Of course, these Angel Hex skins, they're there as well now. They are pretty damn cool in my opinion, and you actually have a bundle for 1180 ISK if you actually want to grab all of them in one go. But yeah, actually a sale this week with the Octopus Orange Flight skin for Caldari ships. Next up, let's get started on what we're actually here for, the look at the market itself. As always, we're gonna start with Plex at 335. Like that, and we can clearly see already from the prices in JITA, almost 3.2 million, that we are on our way back up. So let's take a look at the chart here. After a little bit of a dip with very solid looking volumes here, we actually have you know, Plex increasing in price once again and basically restarting continuing the trend that had started after it reached the bottom here in August of 2.7 million ISK. So we are on our way back up, and this little dip here was of course a CCP sale, which means that inflation is taking over once again. People are right now, you know, paying more and more for Plex. I do think that that will continue up into the winter. I just am not sure if we'll see an actual peak from a CCP deployment from the update itself. While you'll have some new things to do in Abyssal Dead Space, like co-op with 3 frigates, which I think makes sense. Start at the lowest scale so that the investment is as low as possible, so that you can get newer players in there as well. That sounds pretty damn interesting. You've got the new structures as well, but you know, those already exist in nullsec. It's really basically bringing the upwell structures up to parity with bosses that they're aiming for. And so overall, none of this is really like a massive addition to the game or really game changing or anything like that. It's, you know, the maintenance mode that we have been in since the summer, basically, in my opinion, that is continuing. So what we have here, in my opinion, is a situation where Plex will follow the regular market forces and where we should not expect like a massive increase in price, unless the one factor that can still change that, in my opinion, would be the players themselves. If we do see a traditional massive winter war in nullsec, that would of course be the exception to the rule. But I personally think that outside of dips like this, where a CCP sale influences the price for Plex, we can expect a slow, steady increase in price due to natural inflation. That also, in my opinion, does mean that it'll be an interesting gauge for actual player activity and actual success of CCP's features when it comes to EVE Online in general. If you don't have like a massive hype bump or anything like that, you know, more increased price for Plex should mean inflation in the game, but also strong demand, and yeah, a fall off in the prices might mean the exact opposite. Moving on to the multiple pilot training certificates, after another dip here as well with increased volume. Obviously, a CCP intervention, we are hesitating to go above 1.13 billion ISK. So these are, and I should really take out the filter. Selling for a bit above 1.1 billion, buyers are a bit below 1.1 billion. Bit of hesitation here. I think this is normal. This is something that doesn't sell that often. You have this massive decrease in volumes, thus you have a little bit of inertia when it comes to that, because you have a backlog of these very cheap training certificates that are still roaming around here as well, of course. Quick look at the player-owned trade hubs for Plex themselves. Almost 3.2 million for the sellers, and yeah, same thing here, 3,140,000 is for the buyers. So very narrow margin between these two on an increased price. I would say that, yeah, it's the market that is basically increasing that price and not any external factors at the moment. For the skill extractors, very close to the Plex chart, of course, now substantially above 350 million ISK, 361 for the sellers, 350 million for the buyers. Bit more of a margin opening up between these two compared to the Plex prices. But I basically do think that Plex is going to drag all of that up as well, including the buyers for skill extractors eventually. For the skill injectors next, we will start with the large skill injectors, and here this is definitely a turnaround after reaching a bottom of 700 million ISK. The large skill injectors are a little bit up in price, not by too much just yet, but I basically do feel like the 700 million ISK mark will have been your bottom, and that your time for purchasing some of these is now or has just passed. We still have buyers at 697 million ISK. So that's just below 700 million, but the sellers are now up to 708 million ISK. So I think that basically now the Plex inflation is going to start to show through on these large skill injector prices as well. For these small skill injectors, we can also see the turnaround happening and prices reaching 140 million ISK after a sustained bottom of, no, it's a bit more than that. Let's see if I can get a better scale. It always says 0.14 billion, so let's actually go take a look at the prices. 143 million for the sellers and 138.4 million for the buyers. But on the chart, on the 5-day moving average, you can clearly see that that bottom has been forming. That doesn't guarantee that we will move up in tandem with Plex, but I think that there's basically a very strong chance that indeed your investment opportunities for the injectors are now or have just passed. For the daily alpha injectors, we are seeing prices drop down just a little bit in the last couple of days, but we are hovering in the 58 to 60 million mark at the moment. Almost 61 million for the sellers. In fact, most sellers in Jita are trying to sell for close to 63 million ISK. It's not that many of them and we are getting to that price, whereas the buyers are staying at a cool 56 million ISK, so pretty healthy margin here, almost 10% of the price. And in my opinion, it also does show decently strong demand, because we have pretty high price at the moment for these daily alpha injectors, which should show that I think summer is over, players are coming back, and you do have that constant trickle of people that either come back to the game or want to explore EVE Online for the first time. And yeah, I do think that it's actually a good choice from CCP to look at the Vortex, because those statistics from the keynote are pretty crazy. I think it was like, was it 5 corporations that are responsible for 50% of the Vortex, and that they kill more than 100 ships for 1 loss on the from the defenders. So it is very, very one-sided at the moment, and especially for alpha players, new players, this can be an experience that breaks your willingness to give EVE Online a try. And so I think that that's a good thing that CCP is actually looking into it, but I also think it's a good thing that they're not just throwing everything out and saying no more Vortex. And yeah, the CSM suggestion of look into only allowing corporations that have structures be Vortexed. They already saw that the numbers there are still very much in favor of the attackers, but a lot less bad. And indeed, once you have established yourself well enough in the game that you put up your own structure, I do think that you will have at least a plan in place, like we do when it comes to dealing with a Vortex. So we'll see how all of that goes. But yeah, strong demand in my opinion in the daily alpha injectors, decent inflow of alpha players, new players, people taking a look at the game, and so I think it's natural that CCP wants to increase retention by doing something about the Vortex. My personal expectation as well for 2019, CCP is planning to develop a new Vortex system. I think they'll go with an objective based one, where for instance a Vortex is not just a blanket kill everything, but might just have a goal of destroy this structure within this 1 week period or something like that. They might need to look at the structure defensive systems as well in Vortex, in HiSec, perhaps make them even more vulnerable. You know, who needs those super strong defensives, those very long timers in HiSec when, you know, we have this massive proliferation of structures there. But yeah, lots of potential to get this right and to actually you know, make sure that the negative impacts of the Vortex, which are pretty obvious on new players at the moment, get ironed out. Next up, let's move on to the mineral market at 12.35. Like that, and we will start with titanium as always, and that is not looking very good on the chart. We even have a median daily price of very close to 4.5 ISK. We have definitely gone below 5 ISK at this point, and if we look at GTI itself, we can definitely get rid of this filter up here. 459, that's a pretty fresh order that's coming in. I think that will get snagged up pretty soon, but 478 for titanium on the seller side, that's where the competition starts. And again, at 480 you've got 2 billion units, 2 billion here at 479, another 1.8 billion. That is a lot of supply, more supply than we need at the moment. And so at 458 for the buyers, we are definitely below average now, and we are definitely in a situation where activity has increased in the game, I think, across the board. Industrialists, I think, tend to be the ones that do stick around a bit more as well when it comes to summertime, and as a result now more stuff is coming in, more supply is being created across the board in the game, but no massive wars, and so destruction is lagging behind. We have lower prices, and the longer this imbalance maintains, you know, the lower these prices will actually go, in my opinion. And as a result, timing the right bottom for a possible war in the future is something that we might want to do. Next up, we've got pyrite. That's a bit of a weird chart after obviously dipping to 3.2 ISK or something like that. The chart is moving back up on some increased volumes, but are we at 4 ISK? Sellers are at 387, buyers are at 367, so we're just a bit above 3.5 ISK. This isn't a great price, but at least it's not a continual downward spiral to less than 3.5 ISK at this point. So yeah, it's 3.5 to 4 ISK for pyrite, super cheap, but here the market is hesitating to go even lower. Next up we have Mexalon. I think that is going to be bad news after a bit of a jump back up just because of the volatility of the declining price to less than 60 ISK. That was not sustainable, but the trend is pretty obvious. We are also going down. We are well below average, and sellers are in at 61.72, buyers at 58 ISK. That is the 1 year low point if we disregard this one little major dumping that happened like 10 days ago or something like that. So this decline was not sustainable. We did have a little bit of a jump up, but the decline is just inevitable. I do think that 60 ISK will come in play. The danger is if on this slow slope we break through 60 ISK, then I think it's going to be sustained, and then we might be looking at 55 to 60 ISK trade range in the near future. It's just a situation with mining and with minerals at the moment. Too many people are mining compared to people losing their ships in ETH at the moment. For Isogen, yeah, even more terrible news. 1 year low point yet again, heading for 15 ISK at this point, 16 ISK for the sellers, 15.71 for the buyers. That is not the chart you want to see if you're a miner, of course, but it must also be said that for most miners, a lot of this will probably be offset at this point with their moon mining activities. So this does not mean that you're not getting anything out of your mining anymore. You just have to know that, yeah, your most efficient time will probably be spent focusing on moon mining opportunities, so that you also grab some megasite, also grab some Mexalon and things like that. And basically all of this Isogen, all of this pyrite, and potentially now also starting all of this Mexalon is more of a byproduct that is massively being mined as well while you're doing those moon mining activities, and thus you end up with still overall a decent income, I think, for miners even in HiSec. Although of course if you're only doing regular belts, then you'll start to have a real problem, of course. But yeah, CCP already said that activity is way higher than they thought, and yeah, as soon as you can get more ISK per hour out of your mining activity in HiSec, I think a lot of people are just jumping on that opportunity. For Noxium, next we have this continued hesitation, but it's pretty obvious as well that what used to be defended was 300 ISK, and we're now in the 275 to 300 ISK price band for the range. 293 for the sellers, 277 for the buyers. Definitely below average as well for the year, and the pressure is on the 20-day moving average. That is pretty obvious. For Zydrine next, continue, yeah, same thing, right? This is very close to the Isogen pattern. What happened here is, of course, more and more HiSec production is coming online and driving the price down to, well, they're trying to test 400 ISK, I think. Yeah, 429 for the sellers, 403 to 404 for the buyers, 400 ISK for Zydrine, something that was unthinkable a couple of years ago, but also, of course, being able to get your Zydrine steadily from HiSec was also something that was impossible back then. Megasite, same thing, continuing the slide as well. Heading in that same 400 to 500 trade range, is a bit more expensive. 458 ISK for the sellers of Megasite, 423 ISK for the buyers though. So I do think that yeah, 400 ISK is going to come into play in the upcoming weeks as well, unless as I've said before, a nullsec blows up or something like that. But I also don't think that that is majorly going to happen with this winter either, because of the new upwell structures there. There will definitely be some manufacturing and things like that happening when it comes to those upwell structures. The real question is, will those require PI or only minerals? Will that be something to that will affect the prices in JITA? I personally don't really think so. Most of these nullsec alliances have become more or less independent from HiSec supply and things like that. And as a result, I basically think that yeah, these alliances in Nullsec will use this winter a bit more as an opportunity to revamp their infrastructure, to do all the things that they need to do with the new uprel structures, and I'm not sure if we'll see major campaigns happening then and there. Finally, we also have a more fight that is continuing to decline as well and coming very close to a one-year low point. 8,300 for the sellers, 8,200 for the buyers. If you ever see this dip below 8,000 ISK, I would personally consider that a major buy opportunity though. But the momentum across the board is to new one-year lows, so be very careful to not catch that falling knife either. Finally, we are moving on to the next one. Here is PI at 20 minutes. Okay, well, a little bit of a shorter one compared to my times last week, but we'll see how it works out. Here are the broadcast nodes, and these are back up for the week for sure, but still moving well within the average range. 2 to 2.1 million. Sellers are a bit above 2.1 million. Buyers are still at 2 million. Still not a major demand at the moment for these broadcast nodes. That is interesting. So if you want to still grab some of these, definitely put up your buy orders. Now, one thing to note, right? We've got Sino jammers, we've got jump bridges, we've got a lot of stuff from Nullsec that will be coming. There will be this industrial rush there as well. If these advanced PI materials are needed in these structures, we might see this massive increase in demand all of a sudden. Not that many people keep a close eye on all of this, and so I am personally, you know, it is getting closer to, if you want to take the gamble, get your buy orders up and running and grab those supplies so that you can sell them at a massive increased price if that does materialize. But it's coming closer, so don't waste too much time. Here, construction blocks, yet again a one-year low point, breaking through the 10,000 ISK barrier. 10,400 for the sellers, but 9,861 for the buyers. So you can buy construction blocks for less than 10,000 ISK. If an industrial rush happens, this might be a great buy opportunity. Consumer electronics continuing to meander in the okay range, in my opinion. 13,500 for the sellers, 11,700 for the buyers. The average in between those two is probably a normal price. It is notable that we have a pretty wide margin here for consumer electronics. You could almost just, if you manage to buy any of these, put them straight up for a sell order. So I do think that that will not work out. Yeah, interesting situation there. Coolants back up. Okay, I was a bit afraid that we would start a serious decline, but no, we are back up close to a one-year high point. 11,400 for the sellers, 10,900 for the buyers. Great time to make and sell coolants, obviously. Enriched uranium also slow increase in price to a one-year high point. 13,800 for the sellers and 13,000 for the buyers. Not bad. Fuel related, definitely a pretty good price at the moment. The integrity response drones, here we are starting to see some moves. Look at that volume increase. Look at when it was triggered. When that bottom was clearly visible, we went to as low as 2.06 million on the chart, but now we are up to 2.5 million for the sellers, 2.34 million for the buyers, and this is the pattern that I was talking about. If there is this industrial rush for replacing all of their infrastructure with the new uprel structures, then you will see patterns like this, and probably even bigger ones as well. Massive volumes, increased prices, some big players emptying out GTA 4.4, and that is of course when you want to have your stocks ready so you can put them up for a nice price. Yeah, this also means integrity response drones, unless there is this delay and you, or this massive supply that can crush this price again, then we are looking at an end to the actual buy opportunity on a pretty obvious buy opportunity that I spotted like a couple of weeks ago for these integrity response drones, close to 2 million ISK. Mechanical parts, unlike coolants, are not making the comeback back just yet, but they are still holding close to 11,000 ISK. 11,400 for the sellers, 10,200 for the buyers. Still a great PI material to produce as well. On barren planets, very common, very easy to make, very easy to get decent volumes of, so not bad to be producing at the moment. Nuclear reactors continuing this hovering around 100,000 ISK, lacking the volatility for active trading. So yeah, 107,000 for the sellers, 90,000 for the buyers. It's basically found its trade range. It's moving in between sellers and buyers from day to day, but nothing really that allows you to either have a really good buy opportunity at, let's say, less than 80,000 ISK, or an awesome sell opportunity either. That's unfortunate. This one was one that did this several times every single year since we've started checking it, and now it's basically died down quite a lot. Organic mortar applicators, look at that as well. Your buy opportunity at less than 1 million was last week or so. Now we are up to 1.2 million almost for the sellers and above 1.1 million for the buyers. Yeah, the market is starting to take note of those structures, of course, that are coming on the horizon, and people are grabbing their positions. For robotics at around 100,000 ISK on average on the charts. Yeah, just below that for the sellers, and also very narrow margin, 97,000 ISK for the buyers here. So robotics, unlike coolants, not making a good comeback, but like mechanical parts, defending a more than good price at the moment. Self-harmonizing power cores, advanced PI materials, and we are starting to see the pattern here, slightly increasing volumes, about 2 to 3 times the normal amount, and the price taking off from 2 million to almost 2.4 million for the sellers and almost 2.2 million for the buyers. So the broadcast nodes are pretty much the exception, except that they're also up a little bit for the week, but they haven't broken through their averages just yet. For the mortar applicators, obviously, yes, same thing with the integrity response drones. We're obviously going to 2.5 and above. So yeah, it's looking like the very last few days if you want to take those positions. The self-harmonizing power cores, yeah, that's the one where we actually stopped at, I think. Yeah, almost 2.4 million and almost 2.2 million. There we go. Next up, we have the superconductors. Let's take a look at that. That one is right in the average range as well. I think 11 to 12,000 ISK, 11,600 for the first seller, up to 12,000 pretty soon, and then 11,600 for the buyers. Yep, that's right on the average. Okay to sell if you want to hoard it. That makes sense as well, with peaks up to 14k. Test cultures, a little bit of a comeback as well, after a pretty pronounced 1-year low point of 7,200 ISK, still below 8,000 ISK though. So if you still want to buy some test cultures, put up a buy order, 7.5, 7.6, something like that should work out. And finally, wetware mainframes, after also, 1-year low point at 2.1 million, volume increased prices. So some people are definitely prepping for those structures. Hoping, assuming, perhaps having information on CC that I haven't seen yet, that these are a part of the industrial process. 2.2 million, just above that for wetware mainframes, 2.1 million for the buyers. So yeah, that turnaround does seem to be happening. Those buy opportunities, we had several. I covered those during Eve Talk. So if you wanted to take positions, if you wanted to take that gamble, you should have done so. Now all that we can do is wait for the CC information to drop and to confirm whether or not these will be used in the next upwell structure. My personal position on that is that it's very likely to happen. Next up, advanced moon materials at 2810. So that I have a bit of a wind up here. Let's get started. A lot of these were pretty low, but look at that. Crystalline carbonites back up towards 200 ISK. That is very interesting. I thought that the general vibe was, look at those minerals go down in price, so we're producing way more than we are destroying at the moment. And that was translating into advanced moon materials, the same thing. But all of a sudden, crystalline carbonites, we had a buy opportunity close to 140 ISK, is now selling for 181, and buyers had to move up as well to 166. So I would call this almost a small sell opportunity in crystalline carbonites if you bought at the right time. Next up we have the ferrite carbide staying pretty low at 150, obviously close to 1 year low point as well. Buyers coming in at less than 150 I think that this is a buy opportunity for the ferrite carbide at the moment. After that we have the titanium carbide, which is bumping off the 150 mark, which was a 1 year low point, is back up a little bit now on increased volume. So yeah, we're basically 3-4 days late for the bottom opportunity for titanium carbide. Buyers are up to 159, sellers at 178. I think a buy order below 160 is still okay to do. If you look at this entire chart, generally we're trading around 200 ISK, but the very bottom has already passed and has been spotted and grabbed by investors. Next up we have the tungsten carbide. Same thing here, right? Bottom at 164. I think I bought this too early, but here also increased volume, price back up, but staying below 200 ISK, which I think is still okay. 193 for the sellers, 178 for the buyers. You could give it a try if you still want to make those investments, but it's interesting to see this turnaround all of a sudden. With crystalline carbonate going up from a bottom, and same with the others after a bit of volatility. And I hope that that noise outside doesn't last too long and that doesn't come through too much. Let's keep going. Next up, the metamaterials. Photonic metamaterials, pretty stable, slight downtrend visible here, nowhere near the 1 year low point yet. So selling for 19,000 ISK, buyers at 18,000 ISK here. For me, an in between one, I wouldn't invest here. Plasmonic metamaterials, after going down to a less than average price, is stalling here. It's also hesitating, so it's pretty obvious that something is happening in the advanced moon material market that is stemming the decline in prices. 19,000 for the sellers, less than 18,000 for the buyers. That is not so bad, but it is also not a 1 year low point, so that's also a no for me at the moment. Non-linear metamaterials, same pattern here, right? Was starting to decline, came close to 1 year low point, 20k, but not actually reaching that, and now back up in price already. 24,500 for the sellers. That's an average okay price, but nothing too special. 23,600 for the buyers is definitely not a buy opportunity. So the metamaterials are all stalling, back up in price a little bit, and back on the average price range, unless the terahertz metamaterials do something different, and they do, interestingly enough, landing on 20k and not coming back just yet. 20,500 for sellers, 19,400 for the buyers. I would say if you want that metamaterials investment opportunity, it is going to be the terahertz one, because your buy orders are below the entire chart. Very interesting to see all these different movements and activities depending on the different region where or race where they generally come from. But the vibe here is, yeah, we're not going to move into like a completely new lower trade range. Lots of these are stalling and slightly increasing in price. For the other advanced moon materials, that might be different. Fermionic condensates continuing the slide, although definitely slowing down as well. 94,000 for the sellers, 91,000 for the buyers. You know, obviously not a 1 year low point, so this is an average normal price where we apparently are landing. Ferrogel, that is actually the pattern of the metamaterials. After a volatile decrease in price to maybe a slightly below average price, bit of a jump back up, and now we are at the 45 to 50k trade range. Yeah, 49,000 for the sellers, 47,000 for the buyers. Right around average here, and so this could go either way. I would not either buy or sell myself at these prices. Next up, we've got the Fullerites. These are staying at the low point, but after reaching that 885 buy opportunity of less than 900 ISK, bit of a bump up on volumes yet again. So people are keeping a close eye on all of this. 960 for the sellers, 915 for the buyers. Below average, but not the bottom anymore. Hypersynaptic fibers actually staying at the higher range of around 15,000 ISK at the moment, so there's really not that much to say on these. Nanotransmitters, same thing here, right? Nice volatile decrease in price, a buy opportunity at 4,350 ISK, but the jump is already back up. 5,000 for the sellers, 4,700 for the buyers. So very, very interesting and a little bit out of left field for me. I thought we would be in a pattern that would be pretty similar to minerals, but no, it is completely different. Here again we can see that in September the phenolic composites went down in price substantially, down to 2,500 ISK, and I thought we would have more momentum, but no, the jump back up already happened and we are back at trading around 3,000 ISK for phenolic composites. And then we have ceramic fibers left, that is landing at 400 ISK. Buyers are at 395. I would say, considering this chart and where we come from, this might still be a buy opportunity as well. So very interesting week actually in the advanced moon materials. I was expecting further declines, but the majority of them are stalling on that and even turning around. And a couple of them are still, in my opinion, in buy order territory. Some exceptions here and there. And I think if the pattern holds, we'll see those jump up by next week. And I wish that noise outside would stop, but there's not much that I can do about it. So we'll just move on. Take two ships next at 35.10. Like that. And here I listened to a couple of you guys comment. The idea was remove the interceptors that lost their bubble immunity and just add them in, because it is a doctrine ship in many Gnostic places. And so that's what I did. It's a little bit of a yeah, it's less, right? I removed 4 ships, it's 1 ship added. So in net, this ought to be a little bit more quickly, but I agree that unless CCP comes out with rebalancing of those interceptors that that lost bubble immunity, that those are basically down the drain and not too interesting. What the hell? I also wonder what is happening outside now. Sorry about these interruptions, but it's kind of a weird noise. Alright, let's get started here. The Aries, after jumping up to 40 million plus, is now landing at 32,500. So I think that the market here has basically digested these changes. 33 million for the sellers and almost 30 million for the buyers. An average price for these interceptors, still a bit too expensive, so obviously not in buy order territory. For the Basilisk here, very interesting. Advanced moon materials, we see that turnaround here and an immediate response here as well. The Basilisk, after reaching a bottom price of 230, increased volumes up to 250, so people jumped on that, made some investments, and perhaps they're right considering what's happening with advanced moon materials. Cerberus was also at a bottom price, increased volumes but not by too much, price up slightly. Very interesting in my opinion, because this ought to be a very good ship for the next event, the Crimson Harvest. 240 million for the sellers, 194 for the buyers. Very, very affordable Cerberus at the moment. The Crow next, that one, look at that, increased volumes and went up to 40 million ISK all of a sudden. Well, if you wanted to take a big gamble, it would have been this one right now. The Crow selling for almost 44.5 million ISK. The buyers are at 32.8 million. So this is your sell opportunity in the Crow, quite pronounced. I do like this volatility, of course. It creates opportunities. It's just very tricky to time your buy opportunities. The Guardian also, after reaching a 1-year low point, is jumping up a little bit, but staying at a decent price range. 230 for the sellers, 217 million for the buyers of the Guardian. So that's quite doable. Also increased volumes. This is obviously again investments and Gnostic groups that are buying up these ships as they get cheap enough. The Heretic, same pattern yet again, reaching close to 1-year low point, bump up, now already on its way back down as well. Sellers at 64 million, buyers are at 58 million, below 60, that's not bad, that's below the entire chart. If you want to take a gamble, if you're looking for that tick to buy opportunity, I would say the Heretic is a buy opportunity. The problem is the volumes are very low, so it's going to be very tricky to actually sell what you buy. The Hound next, after a jump up to 35 million, is now settling at around 30 million ISK here. 28.5 for the sellers though, so we are substantially below 30 million, and 26.8 for the buyers. Again, I think for the frigates, a bit of the market finding its new price range after the shakeup with the loss of the best interceptors that happened. Next up we have the Ishtar. Again, slightly up in price after reaching a low point here, selling for 266. Buyers are coming in at 249 almost. Still affordable, still doable, and potentially an interesting option for the Crimson Harvest, because we now also know that it's a combination of combat and mining that might be happening. And well, if you get many of these resources pretty quickly, you might want to grab an Ishtar, put 5 mining drones in there, and try to combine everything that way. Next up here we have the Manticore. Under pressure a bit, went up to 35 million, but is currently trading at a less than average price. 33 million for the sellers and 30.5 million for the buyers. Pronounced buy opportunity. Actually 30.5, it's not bad. It's definitely at the lower end here of the entire chart. So yeah, maybe the Nemesis Manticore, you could definitely consider it. Then we have the Munin going up in price to an above average price of around 300 million. You can see the volumes increase as well. 305 for the sellers, 254 for the buyers. Quite a wide margin here. So must have been some serious purchasing happening up to 300 million. The Nemesis going back down in price. We would love to see 25 on the buyers. We're not there yet, but with a bit of momentum, we might see a nice buy opportunity in the Nemesis soon. The Oneros though, alright, counter to most other Tech 2 cruisers, is continuing to go down in price. The chart is heading for 180 million, sellers 190, buyers 178, and it's only one of them. The Oneros is now in a buy opportunity. Again, keep in mind very low volumes, but it is a logistics cruiser, and on some nullsec action it will find its way in these fleets as well eventually. And so as a result, this is a very interesting chart where you have a nice buy opportunity. Purifier, flat at 30 million. I personally don't really like it. Buyers are at 28. A bit too early. I would love to see another pronounced dip to like 25 million. I think the Purifier ought to be close in line with the Nemesis and the Hound. And so as a result, I think that here it's a bit too early to call it a buy opportunity. The Saber slightly up in price again from 70 million ISK. Not much to say. 72.5 million for the sellers, a bit less than 70 for the buyers. This is on the average on the chart, and gonna be tricky, I think, to grab one for less than 70 million on the buyer side of things. The Scimitar next, also a bit of a bump up, nothing too major, bringing it back to an average price, where a couple of weeks ago it was probably a bit below average. And then finally we have the Stiletto as well, that is jumping up to 32.5 million, so another interceptor that has bubble immunity, that is at an okay price, that has found its price yet again above 30 million ISK. So the Tech 2 market, very interesting one actually. But we can see that many of those that were constantly under pressure, like the Guardian, like the Cerberus, like the Ishtar, are starting to also have that turnaround, just like in the advanced moon materials. Still, some of them are pretty interesting when it comes to an investment opportunity. Potentially the Manticore, I liked that, and then the Oneros, that is quite pronounced, lacking in demand right there. Next up, we have the Tech 3 ships at 43 minutes. Like that. As always, we'll start with Destroyer. Here is the Confessor, slightly up in price. Interesting, some volume spikes as well. Currently selling for 33.5 million. Buyers are at 30 million. And what I'm noting here is the volumes, 11, 29, 21. Nothing too major here. So at the moment, we could go either way. More supply is going to recrash the price. If this keeps up, we might be in for inflationary, slightly increased prices, and a Nasdaq action might actually drive the price up substantially all of a sudden. So this is really the wait and see pattern, and it does indicate that your buy opportunity for the Confessor is probably over. I hope that you managed to grab a couple close to 30 million ISK. I think I've got one. Next up, we have the Hecate. That one is obviously up in price on increased volumes as well, up to 45 million ISK, 48 for the sellers, 41.3 for the buyers. I think I have a couple of Hecates that I bought pretty cheaply that I should definitely consider selling. But again, look at the volumes, 46, 46, 30, 27 for something that is very much above average all of a sudden in price. This is nothing too crazy. This is a normal market action that has a chance to take over, and we could go either way here for the Hecate. It's in a sell opportunity. Next up, we have the Jackdaw. Very interesting here as well. A couple of weeks ago, 35 million on average, probably close to 30 million on the buyers of side of things. So you had to buy opportunities. We jumped up to 40 million on average, almost 40 million for the sellers, 35 million for the buyers. And let's take a look at the volumes again. 63, 20, 11, 12, not the 300 that we saw before. So all of that is over. Yeah, your sell opportunity might be coming soon. Your buy opportunity might be over. And then finally, we have the Zwepel, which I picked up as well at, I think it was 29 million or something like that. And look at that, we broke through 30 million on the average price range, but now selling 36.5 million, and buyers are back up to above 29 million. So I grabbed my Zwepels, although we could have done better in the last couple of weeks, I think, like 10 days ago. I was a little bit early on the actual bottom, but I have that investment ready. And if this one jumps to like 44, 48, like the Hecate, that is where, of course, we want to sell. So interesting week. Oh, and then again, the volumes. Yeah, you can see that we're not having hundreds of Zwepels on the market anymore. So I've always said that I felt like we might get into an oversupply territory. Maybe I focused on that a little bit too much in all of these EVE talks, but it was really always that, yeah, there's still hundreds of ships and we could see more, but here we have that turnaround. The oversupply situation is completely gone, and yeah, this is where you can start to look for your sell opportunities while you slowly bought on the obvious dips on these charts, hopefully. I didn't buy that many of them, but I definitely have a couple that are ready for sale as well. Next up, we have the cruisers. Here is the Legion continuing a slow decline. That is definitely a pretty low point here. 135 for the first seller, 131 to 132 for the buyers. If you're looking for a Tech 3 investment, this looks like a pretty good time to grab a couple of Legions. Look at the increased volume dragging this price down. So suppliers here are not that crazy anymore. We're not seeing 400 or 500 Legions on the market anymore. This could be primed for that same turnaround. So if you're late on the destroyers, here the Legion is showing that exact same pattern. Bottom prices, very low buyers, but also not seeing that fresh supply in the last 24 hours, continually dragging the price back down here. So Legion, potentially your buy for Tech 3. And in the Loki, it happened. We went down to 160 million ISK. Look at the volume increase all of a sudden. And now we are up to 225 and the buyers are at 206 million ISK. So this one, very nice jump up. It is the most popular Tech 3 cruiser at the moment, but that is, look at that, you could have bought this for like 160 and now we are selling at 225. And again, on the volume side of things, nothing too crazy. Next up, we've got the Proteus, also jumping up in price nicely after reaching a 1-year low point of less than 130. That is not bad, and we are now already up to 157 for the sellers, 129 for the buyers. And finally, the Tengu, you may already have seen that from the ticker as well. Low point here, late September, down to 130 million and already selling now for 172 and 150. Oops, excuse me, that's my pen. And 159 for the buyers. So this does look like potentially the turnaround week in the Tech 3 ships here. I'm not seeing the oversupply anymore, and I'm seeing increased prices in many of them. I hope you made your purchases and that you're ready to unload at the right time. I focused on the destroyers. I do think that the Legion is still the one exception where you could try to grab a couple and hope for that pattern to show up here as well. I think it's prime to do so looking at the volumes, and then you have maybe a lost trade that you can make if you're a bit late to the party. And then finally we have the extra products this week. I'll put it at 48.50. And I'm actually interested in these structures this week. So we are just quickly going to take a look at the prices for these. Why? Well, there's changes coming as well. Structures might become less wanted by the player base because of the changes to Vortex. But on the other hand, of course, the one thing that people immediately say, what will everyone do? Put the structure owners in a separate corporation, put your flying guys in a different corporation, problem solved, no more Vortex for your daily EVE Online activities. That is probably what's going to happen with that change coming in December. But keep in mind, this one is basically I think aimed at stemming the bleeding for new players who get wardexed by those corporations that are looking for those one-sided fights, for those camps in Jita and Amar and things like that. You know, they're really looking to counter that in this first iteration, not to solve the Wardeck problem. So if you look at structures themselves, where are they? Right there. Let's start with the citadels. We'll take a look at the standard ones, and so we've got the Astrahus. And look at that, down in price, definitely not too expensive. We also saw that during the September, August months, we had pretty low PI prices as well. And so here now, we actually have a data point at less than 800 million ISK, 850 for the sellers, 650 million ISK for the buyers of an Astros. That is definitely cheap and affordable, but for a very new player or a group of very new players, this is a massive investment that I don't think they'll make before having enough knowledge about the game to be able to deal with a Wardeck at least somewhat. For the Fortizar next, also definitely 1 year low prices here, currently selling for 9.2 billion ISK, buyers coming in at 8.6 billion ISK. That is, for me personally, still a bit too expensive, which is why I bought a blueprint for the cheaper one, because I am looking into how can I get and where can I get an L structure up myself. It's one of those medium-term, long-term projects that I'm not sure when I'll start, but I am slowly prepping for. So yeah, the Forties are here, 1 year low point as well. Next up, I might want to take a quick look at faction. Ooh, there's actually on sale here. Look at that. You could get a Draconis Fortizar for 30 billion ISK, a Horizon Fortizar for 55. I'm surprised that you've got some of these on sale. 54 billion ISK for a Horizon Fortizar, one Marginis for 60, a Moreau for 80, and some Prometheus Fortizars at 33.5, and an Upbuild Palatine Keepstar. Well, there's no sell orders for those, and I don't think we'll have Keepstar sell orders either. So very interesting. The standard ones here, definitely on the Citadels, are at 1 year low prices, and you actually have some faction Citadels for sale that are affordable. It'll paint a massive target on your back, but it's also a very cool concept in my opinion. Next up, we have the refineries. So we've got the Athenor selling for 888 million ISK, buyers coming in at 770. Looking at the charts, actually very, very flat here. So that is very stable. And then we have the Tatara selling for 7.2 billion ISK, buyers coming in at 5.7 billion. If you ever pick one of those up, I feel like that's pretty damn cheap. And we're actually slightly up in price on average for the Tatara. Then we still have the engineering complexes. Here is the Asbel chart, not a 1 year low point. That's interesting, still below average, slightly below average I think, but not a 1 year low point. 4 million, 333, yep, 4 million for the sellers, 3.7 million for the buyers. The Raitaru is currently selling for 500 million and 464 million for the buyers, so very affordable. Also obviously below average, not the 1 year low point, but pretty close to that. And then the Sotio, which is the one that I find, no, it's not the Sotio, Raitaru. Oh, it's the ASBEL. Oh, here I'm sorry, made a mistake. The ASBEL is the L. 4 billion ISK for the sellers, 3.7 billion ISK for the buyers. I feel like if you want that L structure for the market option, I think a lot of people agree with me, this one is affordable, and if you lose a 4 billion ISK structure, sure it hurts, but that is something that's actually doable for me personally. So yeah, the ASBEL, not a 1 year low point, but around 4 billion ISK, definitely your cheapest L option. And then the Raitaru, which is the M structure, is actually slightly up in price all of a sudden. That's a bit of a surprise to me. And finally the Sotio, we won't see any of those. Well, we actually do see one for 30 billion ISK available in HiSec. All right, some pretty crazy availability here on an Excel engineering complex. That is interesting to see that one sell order here. So yeah, the structure market, I'm interested. I feel like this is a little bit strange that the Citadels are at a 1 year low point, a little bit as expected, but the refineries and engineering complexes are actually up in price a little bit in the last couple of days and weeks. And yeah, basically that is it for this week. I'm going to try to catch as much from ETH Vegas as I can, and I definitely want to see what's up and coming for ETH Online in the future. For now, thank you very much for watching, guys, and as always, I will see you all next time.